Hey, welcome back to the Resilient Achieving the American Dream Companion audiobook. We are going into Chapter 6 here. Chapter 6, I want to talk about something, and I think it's going to be pretty heavy. Something happens in this that is culturally important, because this is really the first time where we witness childhood racism in a way that everyone's kind of old enough to know this is fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's like a Hollywood story,
Mm-hmm.
like just how all of this goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my facts right. You guys are all out riding BMX one day.
About 13 of us. But before we go there, the first time I was called the N-word was one of my childhood friend's father. As we were running through the house, he said, "Stop running through the house, you little N-word." I was 7.
This is before Ricky?
Yeah.
Ricky's dad?
I was 7.
Wow.
7. Right? So, now, 13 of us riding bikes, cruising through the hood, our hood, which really wasn't the hood, but it was our neighborhood. And we thought we were the shit. And we're up in past Johnson Highway, you know, where the Pizza Hut was, and past Via Venito's pizza shop, which is...
What you say is...
damn good pizza. Damn good pizza, right?
Quote, better than Detroit style or anything.
Yes.
I love it.
All right, so it's winding down. The sun is still beating down, but it's winding down. It's probably around dinner time. And Rick, right? I played 8th grade football with him. Him and some of my other teammates were in a group.
Yeah.
We literally just won the football championship.
And to be clear, these are Irish and Italian kids.
Yeah. We all got along great. We went to middle school. We rode bikes. We chased the same girls. It was fun. We had a fun childhood at that point. Riding bikes, jumping off the dirt piles at the baseball field. Just amazing time. But on this particular day, it was hot. There's 13 of us. And we stop at an intersection. And Rick says, "Hey, let's go swimming at my house." Everybody but Jules, right? Because he's the youngest. And Lenny, because he's black.
And then ... My dad doesn't like black people.
Yeah, he looked me right in my eyes and said, "Because my dad doesn't like black people." Now, at that time, Mike Sorello, good friend of mine to this day, he looks at me. He didn't know what to do, but since he was white and the other kids were white, they rode off. Me and Jules sat back, and then me and Jules followed them. All right? So...
And this is the part that rips my heart out. I'm sure it ripped your heart out, but
it was tough to deal with at that time.
But Jules gets the call.
We're in the bushes. We're watching them have an amazing time, enjoying the cool pool, considering it's a hot, sweltering evening, right, after a hot, sweltering day. So, just like in the movies, Jules steps on I was going to say fucking twig, but for emphasis, Jules steps on a twig, it snaps, everything stops, just like in the movies. And Rick says, "Hey, Jules, is that you?" Quiet. Jules looks at me. "Jules, is that you?" Jules says, "Yeah." Then Rick's voice says, "Well, you can come, but Lenny can't." Jules looks at me, so sad. He says, "Sorry." And he turns with his bike, walks through the bushes, puts his bike down, takes his shoes off, takes his shirt off, jumps in the pool. I sat there and watched all of those white kids enjoy themselves in a cool pool, a pool that I was not allowed in because I was black, because Rick's father did not like black people, even though he made his money off of them.
This is a crazy part of the story because these are your buddies.
Mm-hmm.
These are your pals who you spent the whole day with, and then something like this happens.
Yeah. They were a group of kids. I had a lot of group of kids that I hung around with. I hung around with, all types of kids. This was one group of kids that just happened to be mostly Italian and white. And, most of them lived in good neighborhoods. They didn't live in my neighborhood. And so I had friends from all over the surrounding areas that I would hang out with from time to time. I always thought that we were like the same. We never really talked about color. And this was the first instance where I realized that I was different, like really different, not just different, taller, skinnier, faster, but my skin was different. And I realized on this day that my skin was going to be a factor in my life for the rest of my life. So on that slow, agonizing, very painful and hurtful, day, because you got to understand, there's a dirt path that leads to the football field where me and some of the boys swimming in the swimming pool, me and some of the boys swimming in the swimming pool, we literally just won the football championship. Like, you know what I'm saying? It was like not that far away. And I had to walk down this path, and I crossed over the street, and I looked back at Rick's house. Now, I'm telling you, I am so happy that this happened. It hurt like hell at the time because I realized that I was different, right? I was not allowed to swim in a swimming pool because I was black. But I looked at Rick's house, which is still one of the biggest houses in Norristown, and I said, one day I'm going to be able to buy that shit. And so it fueled a passion of wanting something more than I had. Remember, I was a have-not. So I wanted something more than I had. Mm-hmm. And that experience fueled it. So, I'm thankful because at that point I was like, you know what? One day I'm going to live on top of the hill, and looking down on the community and whatnot. And I live in Hollywood Hills, man.
I don't know if it's just written this way, but was that interaction, was that awakening what led into the drinking and smoking and partying version?
Part of it, yeah. Yeah, when you deal with, again, the first time I was called the N-word, I was 7. It was a friend's father. We were running through the house, and you know what I'm saying? The second time is that experience. But that was the most profound experience because it embarrassed me. So when I'm around my friends the next time, I'm feeling less than. I'm like, well, you guys all had an opportunity and an experience, and I couldn't have it because of the way I look. And I say later in my book, it's kind of messed up because I can change my financial status, but I cannot change the color of my skin. It's not my fault that I was born this way. It's not a fault in general, right? I am in touch with who I am. I know who I am, and there's value in that. Remember earlier I said, I view myself a certain way, and that's important. And how I want other people to view me is important. If they don't, treat me as such, the way I want to be treated, it's my job to communicate to them, I want to be treated this way. I can only do that if I'm safe and I know who I am. And I am incredibly safe. And I know that I am a black man in America, in the world, and I honor that. I am proud of that. I would never want to be anything other than that. But if someone treats me different, it's my job to say, hey, don't treat me like that, bro. And if they don't, conform, I can walk away. I can never have to deal with them ever again. I don't have to get all pissed off and get all, crazy, right? Because I have emotional intelligence and I can use it. I can learn how to respond to things and I can walk away. It's not a big deal. But back then, as a kid, it was embarrassing. And next time I was around those guys, I felt different. And it led to drinking. It led to drugs. Marijuana to begin with, did some harder drugs. Very thankful that nothing stuck. and I didn't end up being, incapacitated through, drug and alcoholism, right? I was able to, have a functioning life, something that was meaningful, and nothing ever like took over my life. And that experience, in addition to finding out that Hampton was my real dad, JB was not, right? It all just caved in on my psyche and my soul at the same time. And ninth grade was very traumatizing for me because I would miss the school bus on purpose. I'd smoke a joint, drink a 40 on the way to school, and, I had smelled like weed and beer. And, no one ever noticed, bro. Like
that, all of that, as I'm reading it, I've known you for a while, and I've never known two things. I've never known substances to even be on your radar. I know you don't tolerate them. And I use that word specifically, tolerate, because I'm not saying problematic or anything like that. But this is the first time I've ever heard that you were regularly drinking and smoking, regularly doing any sort of...
13 years old, 14 years old, Yeah, it was pretty bad. And
where were you getting it?
I mean, it's Norristown, man. You just go up to the street, yo, what's up? Let me get a nick, And then beer-wise, I mean, first of all, I was getting served by the time I was 16. I had a mustache. I go in and let me get a beer. You know what I mean? Let me get a 40 of Bud and try to change my voice. But as kids, we got alcohol because, we would pay, couple dollars to the guy walking in. Yo, man, can you get me a 40?
Yeah, the hey buddy.
Yeah, hey buddy, hey. He'd bring out some beer. I think, what was that movie? What was that movie where, what's his name? McLovin.
Oh, Superbad.
Yeah, Superbad. That
Way of Life.
Yeah, that scene right there was that
was you.
Yeah.
You just needed a Latin face.
Yeah. Trying to get that fake ID,
So that's the one thing, is I had no clue of this, but it sounds like, and maybe this is later in the book, it sounds like there's a conquering. I mean, I just know you now, so clearly it didn't follow you into your adult life. But I've never known you to have any sort of substance issue. I've also never known you to run away, and in this, you ran away from the therapist.
Yeah, because I didn't feel, growing up the way I grew up, I didn't feel safe. And that is not a good feeling, man, when you can't trust people. I could trust no one. I did not trust anyone. I thought everyone was going, fuck me over, not going to have my back. I mean, it just got to the point where I felt unsafe,
Well, you were. You grew up in a house with lit cigarettes, almost burned the house down.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up, this one particular case or instance, I was at my uncle's house, right? And, he seemed to be under the influence, and he was trying to basically murder his wife. And my mother and my other aunt, or my aunt, I don't remember which one, tackled him, in the kitchen, and a butcher knife swaying. And I had to go try to grab it. And my mom looked at me and said, go in the living room. And I ran into the living room, but I kept running to the front door. It was a wood front door with amber color plastic glass. And I just put my fist right through it because I couldn't control the amount of adrenaline and the emotions that I was feeling. It was an unsafe environment, right? So there was lots of that stuff. I mean, for instance, this is not in the book, Mr. Frisco. It was an old Italian man that lived across the street from me on the corner of the alley. Awesome guy, great home, kept his home spotless. We would play, and rest in peace, Mr. Frisco. We would play football in the street, Nerf football. Mm-hmm. If that hits anything, it's not going to break anything. But Mr. Frisco would always say, hey, Lenny, you're going to hit the car. You're going to mess up the car. And I would say, Mr. Frisco, it's a Nerf. It's soft. It's not. And we would just go on and play and play and play. That's pretty much every day, right? A neighbor moved in 3 houses down, and then she had this boyfriend, a bodybuilder boyfriend, right? This guy was huge. And one particular day, he was on the porch when Mr. Frisco says, "Hey, Lenny, stop playing football." It's okay, Mr. Frisco. We're not going to break anything. This guy comes off the steps, comes walking over to Mr. Frisco's house. I'm standing in front of Mr. Frisco's house. He grabs me by the neck, lifts me off the ground, starts choking the shit out of me. Right before I pass out, Mr. Frisco says, "Leave him alone. You leave him alone." He drops me. I drop to the ground. I come back to. I run across the street. I run into the house. I tell my mom. My mom makes a phone call. One of my uncles is at the house, got a switchblade behind his back, telling that dude, "Come out the house. You big and bad, come out the house." Why you put your hands on a little kid? Let me show you how to do it. Come here. Let's have a conversation. I ain't going to hurt you. I ain't going to do nothing to you. But he was going to kill him. He was going to stab him. He was going to fuck his shit up because he tried to kill me, man. You know what I'm saying? So it's traumatizing. So when my mother put me in therapy, I was okay with it because the therapist said that I could bring 2 friends of mine, Manny and Jerry. And when they were with me, I felt safe. And next thing I know, I'm in this office and I'm standing in the hallway. Door opens up. "Okay, Lenny, come on in." I said, "Okay." And he made my friend stay outside in the hallway. And fear hit me again. I was alone again. I was unsafe again. And I felt weird in this man's office. And he said, "Hey, sit down here. Number 2 pencils, white, crisp paper. What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "A football player." I swear, I'm telling you, man, I thought I was going to be in the NFL one day. And he said, "Draw me a football player." And so I draw out this football player. Took a couple of minutes. He was like, "Oh, that's very nice, Lenny. Good job." I said, "Can I go to the bathroom?" And he was like, "Yeah." He opens the door. I fucking took off running.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it was that fight or flight, and I fucking ran my ass off. And I ran all the way home, and I never went back. And I would have benefited from that therapy as a child, right? If he would have allowed my 2 friends to come in, they would have benefited too because they were from the same neighborhood. Their situation was probably worse than mine. You know what I mean? So he would have worked his magic on all of us, and we would have probably have been better for it. But just like every other instance or occurrence in my life, my experiences were vast, and I appreciate every one of them. And I always say this, if I had to go through all of them again, 10 times over, to get to where I am right now, bring that shit on, man. Come on. Because I am resilient. And I achieved that American dream.
So let's end the Chapter 6 discussion on something I was super happy to see in here. You brought Lando Calrissian himself, Billy D. Williams, into this story.
Yes.
Who's Billy D. to you?
Billy D. to me is Lando, right? Star Wars, right? But before that, he was a Colt 45 guy, right? And at the time of being a 13-year-old sneaking in the back of, some of our friends' shed, right? Wendy and Jimmy's father's shed, stealing some old Milwaukee's Best, I think it was, right?
Yep.
Trying to get served in the bar. And if he can't, have the, hey, dude, come out, give you the beer. It was a coming-of-age time, right? We were drinking, we were smoking, we were doing whatever we could. There were some kids in the neighborhood who were doing the same. There were some hip-hop stars who were doing the same, and we're watching Yo MTV Raps and whatnot, right? And we were heavily influenced by, men of color who were drinking 40s and drinking beer, and Billy D. Williams had a commercial, old school commercial for Colt 45 talking about it works every time. That's all we needed to hear, man. It works every time.
I was so glad to see it wind up in Chapter 6. Everybody, thank you for listening so far. We'll be back with Chapter 7.